Hello, welcome to Capital Sensei. Today we're going to dive deep into one of the most powerful mental models you can ever learn. A concept that will change how you look at the world, from your investments to the news you watch. We're talking about Nassim Taleb's groundbreaking idea of skin in the game. We'll explore what it means to have a real stake in your decisions, why it's the ultimate filter for nonsense, and how the lack of it is at the root of many of our modern problems, from financial crises to bad policy making. And remember, whenever we can, we try to answer your questions in the comments section. The best discussions happen right there below the video. So, as we go through this, if a question pops into your head, or if you have a personal story about seeing skin in the game in action, please share it. Your experience helps everyone in our community learn and grow. So, let's start with the man himself. Nassim Taleb is not your typical economist or academic. He's a former options trader, a guy who spent decades in the trenches of financial markets, making and losing real money. He's a risk analyst and a philosopher of uncertainty. His style is direct, sometimes abrasive, but it comes from a place of deep conviction, forged in the real world. Skin in the game is a cornerstone of his life's work, the idea that ties everything together. At its core, the concept is beautifully simple. Having skin in the game means you have exposure to the consequences of your actions, decisions, or opinions. You have something to lose. You have a personal stake in the outcome. It's the difference between talking about flying and actually being the pilot of the plane. The pilot has a vested interest, a very personal one, in a safe landing that a mere commentator does not. Think about it this way. Imagine two chefs. The first chef tastes every dish he sends out of the kitchen. He eats the same food his customers do. He has skin in the game. If the food is bad, he suffers along with his patrons. The second chef never eats his own cooking. He sits in an office, designing menus based on food cost spreadsheets and market trends. Which chef's food would you rather eat? The answer is obvious, right? You trust the one who bears the consequences of his own creations. This brings us to the fundamental principle behind skin in the game: symmetry. Taleb argues that a fair and ethical system requires symmetry between upside and downside. If you stand to gain from a decision, you must also stand to lose. The problem in our modern world is the proliferation of asymmetry. We have created systems where certain people can reap enormous rewards from being right, but face little to no penalty for being wrong. The 2008 financial crisis is the poster child for this problem. You had bankers creating incredibly complex financial products they barely understood. They made fortunes in bonuses based on short-term paper profits. But when the whole house of cards collapsed, who paid the price? The bankers, for the most part, walked away with their fortunes intact. It was the taxpayers, the ordinary citizens, who had to bail out the system. The bankers had all the upside, and the public was left with all the downside. That is a catastrophic failure of skin in the game. To understand how vital this principle is, we can look back in history. One of Taleb's favorite examples is the Code of Hammurabi, one of the oldest legal texts from ancient Babylon, nearly 4,000 years ago. One law states, if a builder builds a house for someone and does not construct it properly, and the house which he built falls in and kills its owner, then that builder shall be put to death. A bit harsh by today's standards, for sure. But the principle is crystal clear. The builder had the ultimate skin in the game. He couldn't cut corners on safety because his own life was on the line. The system aligned his incentives perfectly with the safety of the homeowner. Beyond ethics and fairness, skin in the game acts as a powerful information filter. It's the mechanism that separates what works from what doesn't in the real world. Think about the free market. A company that consistently produces a bad product will eventually go out of business. Why? Because the owners and investors have skin in the game. They lose their own capital. The market, through this process of profit and loss, filters out ideas and products that don't serve people's needs. It's not a perfect filter, but it's brutally effective over time. Nature is an even better example. Evolution is the most magnificent display of skin in the game imaginable. An animal with a trait that makes it less likely to survive and reproduce doesn't get to pass on its genes. There's no committee meeting, no academic paper arguing about the best survival strategy. There is only reality. The consequence of a bad idea, a poor adaptation, is extinction for that genetic line. The stake is existence itself. That's why the solutions that emerge from nature are so incredibly robust and elegant. This leads us to one of Taleb's most famous and controversial targets, a group he colorfully labels the intellectual yet idiot, or IYI. This isn't an attack on intelligence or education. It's an attack on a specific kind of intellectual who pontificates about complex systems from a position of complete detachment, with no exposure to the real-world consequences of their ideas. Picture a tenured professor at a prestigious university who writes a paper advocating for a military intervention in a foreign country. He might use complex models and eloquent prose to make his case. He'll be praised by his peers and get invited to speak at conferences. But if the intervention happens and turns into a disaster, leading to chaos and the loss of thousands of lives, what happens to the professor? Absolutely nothing. His salary is secure. His reputation might even be enhanced for being bold. He has zero skin in the game. The price for his bad idea is paid by soldiers on the ground and civilians in a faraway land. This is a recurring theme. You see it with journalists who sensationalize stories for clicks, causing public panic or ruining someone's reputation without any personal blowback. You see it with consultants who give companies radical advice, collect a massive fee, and are long gone before the negative consequences of that advice come to light. The IYI's defining characteristic is that they don't have to eat their own cooking. Their job is to talk, and they get paid for talking, not for the results of their talk. This disconnect is what economists call the agency problem. It's a classic conflict of interest. Imagine you hire a real estate agent to sell your house. You are the principal, and the agent is, well, the agent. Your goal is to get the highest possible price for your house. The agent's goal is to get their commission as quickly as possible. If they can sell your house for $50,000 less than it's worth, but do it a month sooner, that might be great for them, but terrible for you. Their incentives are not perfectly aligned with yours. They have some skin in the game. They'll commission, but not as much as you do. A good solution to the agency problem is to introduce more skin in the game. For example, what if you structured the agent's commission so that they get a much higher percentage on every dollar they secure above a certain baseline price? Suddenly, their incentive to fight for that extra $10,000 or $20,000 is much stronger. Their interests are now more aligned with yours. Skin in the game solves the agency problem by making the agent feel the same pain or pleasure as the principal. This also relates to the concept of moral hazard. Moral hazard occurs when one party is encouraged to take more risks because they know that someone else will bear the cost if things go wrong. The classic example is car insurance. If you have full coverage, you might be a little less careful about where you park your car or whether you lock the doors. The insurance company bears most of the financial risk of theft, not you. The 2008 bailouts created a massive moral hazard for the entire banking industry. The implicit message was, take huge risks. If you win, you keep the profits. If you lose, the government will save you. That's a recipe for repeated disasters. So, if top-down plans from detached experts are so dangerous, what's the alternative? Taleb champions a bottom-up approach driven by trial and error, guided by skin in the game. He argues that complex systems, like an economy or a society, are fundamentally unpredictable. You can't design them like an engineer designs a bridge. They behave more like biological organisms. The only way to find what works is to let people experiment on a small scale. A small business owner trying a new marketing strategy has skin in the game. If it works, they make more money. If it fails, they lose money. They get immediate direct feedback from reality. They adapt and try something else. This process of thousands of small businesses tinkering and experimenting is what creates a vibrant, resilient economy. It's far more effective than a central planner in a government office trying to decide what every business in the country should be doing. The planner gets skewed data, operates on a long time delay, and faces no personal penalty for being wrong. This respect for things that have worked for a long time brings us to another fascinating idea from Taleb, the Lindy Effect. The Lindy Effect suggests that for non-perishable things like ideas, technologies, books, or recipes, the longer they have been around, the longer their future life expectancy. So, a book that has been in print for 100 years is more likely to be in print 100 years from now than a new bestseller that just came out last week. How does this connect to skin in the game? Things become Lindy because they have survived the test of time. They have proven their robustness by weathering generations of real-world challenges. They have been tested by millions of people who had skin in the game, the skin of their time, money, or even survival. The plays of Shakespeare have survived for over 400 years. Not because a committee of academics deemed them great, but because generations of audiences have found them compelling. They won in the marketplace of ideas, where the ultimate currency is human attention and resonance. The Lindy Effect is the historical footprint of skin in the game. Now, let's bring this down to ethics. Taleb argues that a lot of modern ethics is just cheap talk. It's about virtue signaling and holding abstract beliefs without any cost. True ethics, in his view, is about symmetry and skin in the game. It's not about what you say, it's about what you do and the risks you are willing to assume. He makes a powerful distinction between the golden rule and the silver rule. The golden rule says, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. This sounds great, but Taleb points out a flaw. It can be a form of imposition. Maybe you love loud parties, so you throw a loud party for your quiet, introverted neighbor, thinking you're doing a good thing? You're imposing your own preferences on them. He prefers the silver rule. Do not do unto others what you would not have them do unto you. This is a more robust and less intrusive ethical framework. It's about not imposing your will, your risks, and your potential harm onto others. It's a rule of negative action. Don't sell someone a financial product you wouldn't buy yourself. Don't advocate for a war you wouldn't be willing to fight in. Don't serve food you wouldn't eat. It's fundamentally about respecting the other person's right to not be harmed by your actions, especially when you benefit from those actions. This brings us to one of the most counterintuitive and brilliant parts of the book, the minority rule. You would think that in a democracy or a free market, the preferences of the majority would always win out. But Taleb shows that a small, intolerant minority with skin in the game can, and often does, impose its preferences on a much larger, more flexible majority. Here's the classic example. Why is it that in many Western countries, a huge percentage of the soft drinks and other packaged foods are certified kosher? The Jewish population that strictly observes kosher laws is a tiny minority, maybe less than 0.5%. The reason is symmetry in choice. The person who keeps kosher cannot drink a non-kosher soda, but the person who doesn't keep kosher can drink a kosher one. They are flexible. So for a company like Coca-Cola, it makes perfect economic sense to make all their soda kosher. By doing so, they can sell to the flexible 99.5% of the population and the intolerant 0.5%. The intolerant minority, by having strict skin-in-the-game rules, effectively forces its preference onto the entire system. You see the same thing with halal food or the proliferation of peanut-free zones in schools. A small group with a non-negotiable rule wins against a large group with no strong preference. This isn't good or bad. It's just a dynamic of how systems work when skin in the game is involved. So, how can we apply all of this to our own lives, particularly as investors and decision makers? The lessons are incredibly practical. First, in your investments, never, ever take a stock tip from someone who isn't putting their own money where their mouth is. If your financial advisor is pushing a certain mutual fund, ask them if they personally own it. If they don't, why shouldn't you? Look for advisors whose fee structure aligns with your success. A fee-only advisor who charges a percentage of the assets they manage has an incentive to grow your wealth. An advisor who makes a commission by selling you a specific product has an incentive to sell that product, regardless of whether it's best for you. Demand that the people managing your money have skin in your game. Second, in your career, seek out responsibility. Avoid jobs where you are just a cog in a machine, where your work has no visible or measurable outcome. A job where you are held accountable for results, where you have skin in the game, is a job where you will learn the fastest. It might be more stressful, but the feedback loop from reality is what forces you to grow. Being an entrepreneur is the ultimate form of career skin in the game. You eat what you kill. The success or failure of the enterprise rests directly on your shoulders. Third, in your general life decisions, use skin in the game as a filter for advice. Is someone giving you parenting advice? Do they have well-adjusted, happy children of their own? Is a fitness guru trying to sell you a diet plan? Do they follow it themselves, and are they in great shape? Is a self-proclaimed business expert telling you how to get rich? Are they actually wealthy from practicing what they preach, or just from selling courses on how to get wealthy? The source of the advice matters, and the best source is someone who has lived the consequences of that advice. This principle even extends to how we should view heroism and virtue. Taleb argues that true courage isn't about the absence of fear. It's about acting in spite of fear, because you have skin in the game. The soldier who risks his life for his comrades, the firefighter who runs into a burning building, the entrepreneur who risks their life savings on an idea they believe in. These are acts of virtue because they involve taking a real, personal risk for a belief or for the sake of others. It's the opposite of the virtue-signaling pundit who risks nothing but gains social status for their brave opinions. Let's also touch on the complexity argument again, because it's so important. The world is getting more and more complex. Our systems, financial, technological, social, are interconnected in ways we don't fully understand. This is the world of black swans, those rare, high-impact events that are impossible to predict. In such a world, the top-down, grand plan approach of the IYI becomes even more dangerous. A small error in a complex model can lead to catastrophic failure. Skin in the game is the best defense against this fragility. It encourages a system that is anti-fragile, another one of Taleb's key concepts. An anti-fragile system is one that doesn't just resist shocks, it actually gets stronger from them. Think of the human immune system. When it's exposed to a pathogen, it gets stressed, but then it learns and becomes stronger, better prepared for the next attack. A system built on skin in the game is anti-fragile because it learns from failure. When a small business fails, it's painful for the owner. But the broader system learns a valuable lesson about what doesn't work. The failure is contained and provides information. When a massive, centralized system fails, like a government-run industry or a too-big-to-fail bank, the collapse is catastrophic and can bring everything down with it. Decentralization and skin in the game create a system that can absorb and learn from the constant stream of small errors that are inevitable in a complex world. So when you see a politician proposing a grand, sweeping plan to solve a complex problem, like poverty or climate change, be skeptical. Ask yourself, what are the hidden risks? What are the unintended consequences? And most importantly, what skin in the game does this person have? Will they personally suffer if their grand plan goes wrong? Or will the costs be borne by anonymous others, far away in space or time? The principle of skin in the game isn't just an economic or political tool. It's a guide to living an authentic and effective life. It's about accountability. It's about taking ownership of your beliefs, your words, and your actions. It's about understanding that you can't get the upside without accepting the downside. It's about the fundamental link between knowledge and action, between words and deeds. The world is full of noise, of people trying to sell you something, convince you of something, or influence your behavior. Skin in the game is your personal, built-in nonsense detector. It helps you cut through the noise and focus on what's real. It encourages you to trust the artisan over the consultant, the doer over the talker, and the person who takes risks over the one who merely analyzes them from a safe distance. Once you start looking at the world through this lens, you can't unsee it. You'll see the lack of skin in the game in the talking heads on the news, in the corporate bureaucracy, in international policy debates. But you'll also see its presence in the successful small business owner on your street, in the dedicated teacher who truly cares for their students' future, and in every person who stands by their principles even when it's costly to do so. It is a simple, ancient, and profoundly powerful idea. And understanding it doesn't just make you a better investor, it makes you a wiser human being.